The first recorded incident of a UFO abduction dates back to the 1950s. On 15 October 1957, young Anotonio Villas Boas was taken hostage by extraterrestrials. Researcher Bruce Rux relates that Boas, who was initially reluctant to tell about his encounter, was convinced by Dr. Olavo T, professor of medicine at the National School of Medicine of Brazil, and also an APRO representative, to make his story public. On February 22, 1958, he recounted the story to Fontes, journalist Joas Martins, and a military intelligence agent. This Brazilian man was 23 years old at the time. Although the incident took place on 15 October, his eerie encounters began 10 days before that. Around midnight on October 5th, he saw a bright light in the sky from his window. He later woke up to find the same light again moving toward him. On the 14th, he was out working in the fields with his brother when they both saw a glowing light in the sky about 300 feet above their heads. Boas went after it to investigate, but it suddenly darted away to the other end of the field. He chased it to the other end, and it flew back to where it was before. This happened about 20 times, and Boas eventually gave up. The next night, while he was working alone in the field, he saw a red light bolting toward him. He started running to his tractor. The lights were so bright that the headlights of his tractor became very dim. The mysterious object then stopped 160 feet above it. According to Boas, it was shaped like an elongated egg. 3 legs descended from beneath it, and it started to land. The lights of his tractor died when he reached it. A small figure grabbed his arm as he started rushing to his house. He was able to shove it away, but 3 more small figures intervened and lifted him off the ground by his arms. He was then forced inside the UFO. Boas described the men as wearing skin-tight siren suits made of soft, thick gray material with uneven stripes on them. They wore big helmets, and only their light-colored eyes were visible that were protected by 2 round glasses. 3 round silver metal tubes sprung out from the top of their heads, 1 in the center and the other 2 on either side of their heads, and were bent backward and downward toward the backbone. Boas explained that they all wore a red badge on their chests with a silver strip in their centers, which joined onto a claspless belt. There was no hem between their trousers and shoes, and the shoes had a very thick sole and were a little arched up in the front. They were much smaller than Boas in height, with one of them not even reaching his chin. Despite his constant resistance, they pulled him up to a flexible metallic rolling ladder that led into a hatchway. When it closed, there was no seam visible. Boas then found himself in a well-lit square room that had square lights and smooth metallic walls. An opening appeared from the seamless wall, and he was led into another room. There he saw a one-legged table of an unusual shape, which was surrounded by several one-legged bar stools. All of it was made of the same white metal. The sounds the men were communicating in were very nothing human-like. Boas said that even thinking of those sounds made him shiver, and he could not reproduce them. They resembled animal grunts, some shorter and some longer. The creatures then started to undress him. Boas said when he resisted, they stopped and stared at him, as if they tried to make him understand that they were being polite. Although they were being forceful, they did not hurt Boas. After they had removed all his clothes, they rubbed a thick, clear, odorless liquid all over his body, and he was then sent to another room. The room had red scribbles all over its walls that Boas could not understand. 2 men showed up in that room and took some blood samples from his chin. He was left by himself for an hour, so he made himself comfortable on a large, rubber-like gray bed or couch that was set in the middle of the room and had no legs. Gray smoke streamed into the room through holes in the walls that quickly dissolved. Boas felt nauseated. He rushed to vomit in one corner of the room, and breathing became easier. The door opened, and to his dismay, A naked woman then walked into the room. It is speculated that the liquid rubbed all over Boas's body was a germicide, and the smoke was some kind of chemical that enabled the female alien to breathe without a helmet. Boas recounted that she entered the room slowly. She was beautiful, with smooth blonde or almost white hair, fair-skinned. She had big blue eyes and a straight nose that was neither pointed up nor too big. She wore no makeup, and the contour of her face was very different. She had very high cheekbones and a pointed chin that made her face look very narrow. Boas told the doctor she was more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen before. She was slim, and her breasts stood up high and well separated. Her waistline was thin, her belly flat, her hips well developed, and her thighs were large. Some of these details and what followed later were not made public, but Boas, however, hesitantly and with some embarrassment, did discuss the details with Dr. Fontes and Mr. Martins. As per Boas, she came forward and pressed herself against him. He said he understood what she wanted, so he held her close and corresponded to her favors with greater ones of my own. Apparently, the two indulged in sexual intercourse and performed multiple sexual activities for an hour. Even though she didn't kiss him, Boas said he enjoyed it all thoroughly. Instead, she would bite his chin while making animal growls. When they were done, one of the creatures called the woman out of the room. Before leaving, she pointed to her belly and then smilingly pointed to the sky. Boas interpreted the signals as that she would take him with her to wherever she lived. The investigators wrote about how Boas grew anxious while narrating this part of the story, and that Boas took the meaning of her gestures quite seriously. After she left, he was returned his clothes and was led back to the furnished room. The crew sat on the bar stools and talked in their foreign language, ignoring Boas. By now, he was calm because he was sure they won't harm him. In the meanwhile, he took notice of his surroundings and tried to remember as much as he possibly could. The walls were metallic, smooth and hard. There were no windows. A box with glass on its top that looked like an alarm clock was placed in the room too. Time passed, but its needles never moved. The creatures led him through the ship and showed him around. Boas described all the features of the aircraft in lengthy detail. When the tour ended, one of them signaled him to the ladder. Like the woman, he too pointed at himself, and then to the sky, in the same direction as the woman did. Boas got off the flying machine. He was asked to step back. The ladder retracted. The flying saucer rose up and began rotating at a terrific speed. It was loud, and its light turned to many colors, finally stopping on a bright red. The opening from where the ladder had descended was not visible at all. The buzz produced due to its rotation grew louder and louder. It suddenly and unexpectedly changed its direction and dashed southward with a great speed. Within moments, it was out of sight. 5:30 in the morning. Boas made it back to his tractor. Almost 5 hours had gone since he had been abducted. He found out his tractor was damaged. The aliens were smart enough to know he would try to escape while they were trying to take him with them, so they had already detached its battery wires. For 3 months, Boas suffered ailments and excessive sleepiness. The doctors found out he was suffering from radiation poisoning, body aches, nausea, headaches, loss of appetite, a burning sensation in his eyes, and painful cutaneous lesions that discharged a thin yellow liquid. The skin surrounding the wounds presented a hyperchromatic, violet-tinged area. Dr. Fontes was curious about all of it, and it was then that Boas told the doctor about the alien encounter, and he was prompted to make his account public. The most conservative of ufologists believe in this occurrence. Boas continued his studies, went on to receive a law degree, and became a practicing attorney in the city of Formosa, Goiás. He died in 1992 in the city of Uberá in Brazil's Triângulo Mineiro. What do you think actually happened? Is it all a hoax? Or did Anotonio Villas Boas really encounter aliens in the most unusual way? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more entertaining videos.